Welcome to Living Chassidus. Together, let's live the Chassidus we learn.
Welcome everybody. So this is in the morning, 15 minutes to change your life. Usfartem Lachem, the 11th member of the Rebbe. Okay, so basically a quick summary that we've been discussing in order to understand why the pasuk says Usfartem Lachem after Shabbos. You can't for yourself the day after Shabbos, not the day after the first day of Pesach, which is what it actually is because we need to understand, in order to understand that, we need to understand what's the idea of Sfiras Eimer. We are the carbon Eimer and the Sfiras Eimer, which is essentially working on refining the Nefesh Bahamis. And we explained in our space that the idea of working on Nefesh Bahamis, that specifically through using the Nefesh Bahamis and getting the Nefesh Bahamis involved, we can achieve a lot more. Like we said about the fact that he runs, we brought down this pasuk of this is the process that through Hashem took us out of Egypt, and then we do the Avodah. We will run because we use Nefesh Bahamis, so that means we can really achieve a lot, and that's an important lesson in our lives. That we can't negate the Nefesh Bahamis, just ignore it. We have to learn how to use it out, to use its potential, and that's sort of everyone. Especially, it's like, let's say in a classroom, they have a wild kid. The trick is not to suppress him or put him outside of the class, but is to use his ability in a positive. And then that brings us to Avin Melchadav coming to the king's private room, which is Matan Torah. So then we started in Parag Gimel, we're in the middle of Gimel, near the end of it. So now we understand that we have to work on Nefesh Bahamis. That's sort of what we've proven in base. But now we discuss the way it is. So we explained in the beginning that first you have the carbon Eimer, which is essentially connected with the intellect of Nefesh Bahamis, which is only 1 day's worth of work. But then you have the rest of the 49 days, which is working on all the middays, and not just the middah of chesed in general, but the chesed, sheba chesed, gevurah sheba chesed. And the reason why we do it that way is because we need to. It's because in order to refine ourselves and to work on ourselves or to change, if we want to have true meaningful change, we have to be very specific about what we want to change. Anytime you go to anybody to speak about any real issues, or if you speak to someone that really helps, generally they'll ask a lot of questions. Not for them to understand, for you to understand. A person says, I want to fundraise, I want to have more money. Well, how much money do you want? I want a different job. Well, what type of job do you want? I want to be healthy. Well, how healthy do you want to be? I want to lose weight. How much weight do you want to lose? What's the process you're going to get there? You have to be very specific. And this is what we're learning here, and it takes a lot of effort. It takes 49 days worth of effort to really refine yourself. So now we're going to explain something interesting. So there's discussion in the Gemara. Let's see, 1 second. Let me see over here. So we're in the middle of Gimel, sort of halfway through the parak. So we explain that the mitzvah of Sfiras Eimer is not just to count the weeks, but also to count the days. Because like we say in Sfiras Eimer, we'll say Teisha or Shmoni Yomim Shehem Shavua Echad Leimer. Why do we say birth, the days and the weeks? Because the mitzvah is to count birth. And he's going to explain there's a halachic discussion about this, and we can understand that halachic discussion based off of our understanding of this whole idea of Sfiras Eimer. So this is the mitzvah of Sfiras Eimer, to count the weeks, which is meaning the mitzvah is to refine the general midah, the whole midah of chesed, the whole midah of gevurah. But the main thing is to count the days. To work on specific middays, meaning it's good, it's nice to say, I want to have Ma'av Yisrael. And he said, that's a good thing. But the mitzvah is to be specific. So what specifically am I going to do in terms of that Ma'av Yisrael? I want to get up earlier. What specifically am I going to do in order to be able to get myself up earlier? So every level, not just chesed, but chesed b'chesed, not just hoid, but hoid shebhoid, not just malchus, but malchus shebmalchus. And he's going through all levels. That's what he's trying to point out. With this, you can explain the opinion of Rabbi Yerucham. What does he say? He says, he says that nowadays, after the destruction of the base of Mikdash, there's a difference between counting the days and the weeks. So there's opinions here, like a Rambam. He says, he says, even after in the time of Galus, according to the Torah, there's a mitzvah to count Tzfis Eimer. And some people say nowadays in Darabanan. So some opinions say, like the Rambam says, it's Doraisa to count Tzfis Eimer, and some people say it's Darabanan. So Rabbi Yerucham, suppose Rabbi Yerucham say he's mechalik. He makes a distinction. And it makes a distinction between counting the days and the weeks. So one opinion says, the Rambam says it's the Raisa, and other people say it's the Rabbanon. Rabbi Yerucham says it's both. And this is what he explains. To count the days, even now this is the Raisa. But counting the weeks, that's the Rabbanon. So he's saying to count the weeks is the Rabbanon, but to count the days is the Raisa. And we can understand, according to what we've explained, why. Because being that we said, in order to work on ourselves, we have to work on ourselves very specifically. And that's what shaykh to us, that it's hard for us to say, I'm going to have more Avos Yisrael, I'm going to have more chesed, more gvura. But I can say I can have more chesed b'chesed. And if I bring about to myself what that means, I can actually do that. So therefore, he's saying, to count the weeks, nowadays, it's not shaykh that we can refine that. So it's not Daraisa, it's Rabbanon. But to count the days is Daraisa. Why? Because we can actually do that. He's going to explain this. The counting the weeks is the refining of the general midah. Whereas the days is counting is refining every single detail. Kivan she'inyan zeh shaykh lavedi b'poel machshavti v'meisik anal shetzarich liyois v'yeshna b'chol eitz chol zman, being to refine yourself in every midah, specifically the way it is, each one within itself, and that's something that it lasts. It's meaning it can be done even now. Therefore, the obligation to do it is also d'oraisa now, because we can do it to work on our machshavti v'meisik. And work on every single detail. We can do that now, so therefore it's the Reisa. Whereas counting the weeks, which is refining the general midah, which is too general to be specific, meaning to be able to actually work on it. It's not like we said, you can't just say, I'm going to have Ma'avis Yisrael. It's too general, and it's not shaykh for us. We might say it, we might mean well. I'm not negating the good intentions, but the practicality of it is nothing going to change. And being that's not something very shaykh to us. Even there is a maila. Even though there is a maila in that refining the whole general midah, but kivan shezeu bir midas b'cholus she'inyan eliyaseh, which is because it's a much greater avodah, because you're finding the whole chesed. Imagine that, working on yourself, saying I have Ma'avis Yisrael, and you have Ma'avis Yisrael and everything. That'd be amazing. But on the other hand, kivan shezeu avodah naila to such a high level that it doesn't actually express itself in physical action-oriented things. We don't have it these times, without Mashiach. We don't have the ability to refine this. And what we were given the ability, and what's our job nowadays is to do things that can actually be done. And being that can actually be done, so it's not deraisa. And this is Reinu Yerucham, which is very interesting, because remember we said there's one opinion says, like Rambam says, it's deraisa nowadays. You can't just amen. And another opinion says it's derabanan. Reinu Yerucham says To count the days is deraisa, and to count the weeks is derabanan. Interesting. It's very beautiful. And what's the logic? So the Rebbe is giving us logic based on what we've learned. And so now, what is the Rebbe going to do? So if you follow the Maimon, it's very interesting. The first thing we have the question. The second thing we say, we need to understand, we need to refine the nefesh b'hamis. So we explained why, like, what does that mean to refine the nefesh b'hamis? The nefesh b'hamis is a lot more powerful, and he can really change things. So then we explained in Gimel what we just did now. So we said, okay, what does that mean? We said it means to work on every detail. What does it mean to refine nefesh b'hamis? It's not just I'm going to work on myself. I'm going to have more avos yisrael, more chesed. I'm going to be more in control of my life. I'm going to make better decisions. That's a very nice thing to say, but that's not practical. You have to actually, you have to make specific goals, specific steps. It's like a person says, "I want to make $1 million." That's nice, but a friend of mine was telling me that he had a friend. He heard some guy was saying, people want to work on commission or something. So he said, "How much you want to make a year?" The guy's like, "Whatever, $150,000." So he said, "How much commission does that take?" It's like, whatever, I don't know, 1,000 calls, let's say. So he says, "So how many calls a month does that require? Like 1,000 sales. So how many calls does it take to make 1,000 sales? 10,000 calls. So how many calls a month is that? It's whatever. We'll say it's 1,000. So how many calls a week is that? And it's divided by 4, 250 calls. So how many calls a day is that? So it's 250 divided by 8. So we'll say 30. So he said, okay, good. So now you have 30 calls a day to do. But when we say I want to make $150,000, it's like, oh yeah, for sure. But then it's not held onto reality. Whereas what we're learning here is when you want to do something, you have to bring it down. So yeah, you bring it down as detailed as you can, to the point where he's like, yeah, I just need to make 30 calls today, and every day 30 calls. That's a lot more tangible. And this is what we're saying to do. So now the Rebbe said, this is what I told you to do. So let me show you how to do it. Let me explain it to you. So in Dalit, he's going to explain all the levels in Chesed of the Nefesh Kiss, and then he's going to Nefesh Bahamas, and they're very interesting. We'll start today a little bit, and then we'll continue tomorrow. Okay, Dalit. Obir Inyan calls a midas, and to explain the general midas, call midah, call mizayin midas, how each midah, each immersion is included within each one of them. L'dugma, for example, midas chesed. For example, chesed. So that was going to go through chesed, shebechesed, bur, shebechesed, and continue going all the way through. Let's see. Shneisaf al calls midas chesed atzma shinyanahu avos Hashem. So besides the general idea of chesed, which in this case, chesed for Nefesh Kiss is love Hashem. So what does it mean, chesed? So everyone can think for themselves what they would think that means. So everyone explains like this: Harehi kalula gam mikol midos. So in chesed, in that love for Hashem, it has within it all the emotions. In chesed shebechesed, what's chesed shebechesed? Hainu shmitad avas Hashem, because your dominant emotion is love for Hashem. So who oyev is oyev Hashem, because you have chesed shebechesed. So because you love Hashem, so you love the people that love Hashem. That's your chesed shebechesed. So when you come and you love someone because they love Hashem, so you're expressing your chesed shebechesed. Shekasher roye mish esek b'luminat Torah. V'ki mitzvahs b'yoshemayim. It's when you see a person learning Torah, doing mitzvahs with fear of heaven. So that arouses within you a love to him. So when you see someone doing the right thing, and it's like, I love it. That's your chesed shebechesed. And again, being that you love Hashem, that's your chesed. He was Jesus. Because you love Hashem, you do everything with alacrity. That's your chesed shebechesed. Your chesed is that you love Hashem, and because you love Hashem, so you run to do mitzvahs. That's your chesed shebechesed. So what's gevura? Hainu shavas la'avaya being you love Hashem. So that expresses itself in the opposite immersion. That you hate someone that goes against God. So when someone is saying, God is stupid or whatever, chas v'shalom, something like this, and it bothers you, so you're expressing your gevura shebechesed. What's it tiferes? And I guess we'll have to stop here. In tiferes shebechesed hu inyan Haispirus haba me'achesed. The Tiferes b'chesed, it's the beauty that you have within the chesed. Meaning, shkasher roya misha lemin Torah. Makai mitzvah v'terech noyam v'arivos. You see someone learning Torah with this geschmack, mitzvah geschmack. Yeah, he's excited and he's learning, and the person is learning, and you see them, they're enjoying it. So what happens to you? Harehu mispar al hayofit sheb'Torah mitzvah. He gets excited. It's like wow, it's beautiful, beautiful. Overseeing that. Not that he has an expression of love, like, oh, I love that, but it's like, oh, that's so beautiful, that's so nice. So that's expressing the tiferes of the chesed. There's a midah of viful yachal Torah. I mean, he looks beautiful. Look at Torah has it done. Look at this person. He's learning Torah. It's so beautiful. Look what he's doing. He could be doing other things, but it's a beautiful thing. And we'll have to stop there. I'll just tell you a quick story, and then I'll stop the recording. I have something to say. Basically, well, I heard one time Rabbi Gordon Oliver Shalom from Morristown. I once heard him speak, and he said that it was during the summer and he was in camp, and he saw a kid go to 7-Eleven, and he saw the kid going around the stores to want to buy something. He saw like a chocolate bar, but it wasn't Chol V'Yisrael. And the kid looked at it, and you could see he was like battling within himself whether to do it, whether to eat it or not, whether to buy it or not. And if he put it down, so I got him. I think he gave him a hug or something. And he was like, oh, it's beautiful. And he was a very sweet man. And he said, oh, look how beautiful, it's such a beautiful thing. And that beauty that he's talking about, that would be you'd say the Tiferes b'chesed. But he loves Hashem. You see someone putting that effort in and it gives him so much geschmack. So yeah.